Mashiach here. Hello, all the other Mashiachs in the world. Glad you made it by tonight. Is the beginning of Yom Kippur. So anyway, I'm headed. It was weird, you know. Had a friend die. I don't know, about a month ago, and I knew him in Tucson when I was hanging out in Tucson, and good guy. His name was David, and yeah, he was a friend of mine. He died. So they're having a funeral this weekend. And so I said I'd make it, go to the funeral. It's going to be in the town where the is that I'm going to be going to Yom Kippur. I'm going to be doing my atonement anyway because I don't have a ticket. So I know how it is. It is Yom Kippur. Got to have the ticket. Wasn't sure if it was Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur because years ago I walked into a temple and they asked me for my ticket. It was Yom Kippur. And then I didn't have a ticket, so they asked me to leave. So this year, ticketless again. I'm going to be going and seeing if I can reach my final atonement for the year. The day Hashem opens up the book of life, and your year is set for you then. So I'm really excited about this. You know, this is a big one for me, especially since last time they didn't let me in because I didn't have a ticket. So anyway, with my dying, and his funeral's Friday, so going to the Yom Kippur ceremony tomorrow. If I get in, I don't know, maybe I'll just hang on the stairs, you know. That's what I'm thinking. Maybe I'll just wait on the stairs until the service is over with, and at least I get a remnant of it. You know, at least I can hold on to the hem of the service of the atonement service, and still be atoned. Though I think wherever you want to be atoned, you can be atoned. You know, it's a very strong day to be atoned. You don't have to have atonement and be in the temple. But it would be a good place for me to be. You know, since, you know, I've never been in a Yom Kippur service temple for the temple service. So I'm really looking forward to it. And so, yeah, with my friend dying, Dave, yeah, it's given me time to think about, you know, the convergence of all that is happening. Because at the same time, there's another family issue going on to where they didn't invite me. They didn't invite me to a wedding. You know, they invited my children, but they didn't invite me. So anyway, it is what it is. But it's been making me think, you know, about the whole forgiveness thing. And, you know, I boil up a little bit about it, but not too much, because what had happened was that bad, you know? It was that bad that, you know, I was definitely betrayed. Definitely more than one knife went into my back on the death of a daughter. my daughter had died, and somebody, that's doing this in the family, So anyway, to make not a big thing about it, it's about atonement. It's about my sins. It's not about others. Others have to work out their own atonements, what they think is right and wrong, and all that stuff. My children aren't doing anything wrong by going to this wedding. It's their cousin, so it is what it is. If I have a falling out with the father of the bride, it's not her fault, but it is what it is. It's just it would make people uncomfortable, I guess. But so it's not worrying about what other people are sinning about, or how you're feeling betrayed or whatever. They have their own business about how they need to ask for forgiveness and all that stuff. They've never asked me for my forgiveness. I have none to give except to Hashem. So in saying that, these last 10 days, I had to work on a lot of myself, I really did. I had to work a lot about, where my life was, and especially getting some things behind me, just kind of looking at the world the way it is and what Hashem really wants of me this year. I mean, it's the year coming up. I'm looking at the year that has gone by, and what does He have in store for me? Like, what am I thinking is going to happen? I'm hoping He works it easy, but I don't know. But so it is with great. How do you say? I'm ready. It's kind of like I'm a horse in the gate. I'm like, okay, let's see where this year takes me. Because I know it's going to be, there's going to be those times of excitement. And I'm going into 2 years away from making it to Jerusalem, or at least trying to make it to Jerusalem. For the eclipse, when the crescent sun shall be above Jerusalem with the Sarah 136 2027 eclipse. And everybody, not everybody, but that 136 means Yahweh in Gematria. It means Yahweh. It means Adonis. So it's speaking to us all. And so, yeah, this year is kind of like I'm prepping for, I'm even thinking, where's He going to want me to be? What is it? Does He still want me to stay in this low town I'm in? Like I said, I'm ready to go, but I don't know. He might want me to just keep it slow still and just ride it into the Jerusalem eclipse. But I am going to try to be a better person than I was last year. That's for sure. I got to look at some things and say I'm going to do like I went to the store today, right? I go to the store. I'm trying to be a better person for Hashem and for some of His laws. And I went to the store today, right? Go to the store today, and I thought I was going to have a little lunch while I'm driving. I'm journeying now I'm going to the temple tomorrow. But I picked up ham instead of beef, and I was hungry, and I'm really watching it because of my fast, So I'm eating really light, eating healthy, trying to keep it good, keep it what Hashem wants, keep everything kosher, keep everything clean. Keep the food clean. That's all it is. No pig, no shellfish, beef, veggies, stuff like that. Just trying to keep my meals clean and light. Well, today I picked up the beef pack, came in the car, started driving. What is it? It's freaking ham. I picked up ham. For a moment, I thought, no, I could just swallow this out. It will be nothing. I thought, nah, I'm too close now to the Day of Atonement. I don't want that in my stomach if I'm walking into that temple. So tomorrow's the big day. Tomorrow's the big day that the atonement will happen. Either way. And I'm looking at it, you know, from when I first went into the temple on Yom Kippur, the first temple I ever went into, and they asked me for that ticket years ago. That must have been, I'm going to say 2008. It was 2008 because I was delivering mail. It was just right after I died. And I had walked into the temple, and they said I needed a ticket, and this was in 2008. And I didn't really know what the Jewish religion was all about, or Yom Kippur, or Rosh Hashanah, or any of that stuff. I just wanted to experience a temple service that day. And when they asked me for that ticket, I was like really bummed. And I went off and did what Hashem wanted me to do throughout the land of America, throughout the land of the United States for the last 13, 14 years, fulfilling prophecies of the first Americans and other prophecies also, such as LDS. Some of it had to do with the Latter-day Saints. I did return to Adam Omni Odom as a re-Christ. You know, I gave them their re-Christ. And there were people there that day, and they were wondering what I was doing there and all that stuff. But I did fulfill that prophecy also. So, on this Day of Atonement, or on that, you know, with traveling the Americas, fulfilling the prophecies and learning about a lot. I did go into another temple. I went into a temple in Tucson one day. And it was the same reading that they said when I was born, because I was born on Shabbat. I was born on a Shabbat. I was born on a Shabbat on the 7th day of Hanukkah in 1965 under the star Sikhi. It was also the first day of Ramadan, and it was the December 25th. So I went into that temple in Tucson, and they for the first time I ever walked in there, a temple, to listen to a sermon. I had no idea what they were going to say, what it was going to be about. I didn't even know it was going to be the same sermon that happened on the day I was born, which would have been in 1965. And this was in 2012 on the 7th day of Hanukkah. And it was a Shabbat day. So that reading was the same reading as the day I was born. It was about Joseph and his brothers. It made me pause, you know, it made me think about things. And it was right after I saw the white buffalo in Goshen, Connecticut is where Yellow Medicine Dancing Boy was born, and I went there to bury an Apache's altar. And when I buried the altar of the Apache in Goshen, Connecticut, it was like a day, within a day or two, it was Hurricane Sandy started to swirl and brought all her winds up to Goshen, Connecticut. That did happen. That was the year, and I remember that You see, I went to all three services. I went to in December, that December of 2012. I went to the Friday service in a mosque. I went to the Saturday service in the temple, and I went to the Sunday service in the church, in a Catholic church. And I was being called to witness to all those three. And I remember that it was like the Friday beforehand, or right around there, or it was like the day of the mosque day, that I went into the mosque, that I was waiting at this counter for something, to buy something. There was a TV on, and I looked up at the TV, and it was about that big shooting that was going on in Connecticut. And I just remember sitting there, and it was the day I was supposed to go into the mosque. And I was wondering what it all meant, you know. I remember going into that mosque, and me speaking to the cleric. I caught the mosque right on the tail end of their worship service that day. And I stand through it. I don't kneel. I stand. And I remember talking to the cleric afterwards, and he said, we got talking about the buffalo, or not the buffalo, but the bull to be killed, because the reading was about the slaughtering of some bull. And we just kind of were talking about it, and he said, but we eat the meat. He said, the Jews don't eat the meat. He said, they just split the neck. I just remember him saying that. And I didn't know how important that would be to me, also in my journey, with the ashes of the red heifer that would come about last year, 2024, and the ashes of the bride of Christ, and how that all spoke to me, that and how important the ashes of the bride of Christ were then, and how they now cleanse all, everywhere, in all depth, through water, as water is life. And so, the Day of Atonement tomorrow. Tune, you know, I keep on thinking a tune-up, you know? Get tuned up, like that's the end of the tune-up. Like you're running on all cylinders again. You're good to go. You're ready to move forward with a clean car, you know? The car's clean, it's all tuned up. You're ready to move forward. That's what I'm looking forward to with this Day of Atonement. You know, I'm not looking for angels to come down, and I'm looking for a nice service. I'm hoping that there'll be a lot of people there. I'm hoping that I won't get in the way, that I'll just be able to sit quietly and just enjoy the service. If it is to happen, like I said, I don't have a ticket. I don't have that ticket to get in. I'm going to try. I'm going to try to get in. I'm going to try to talk to them. If they say you don't have a ticket, I'll be able to explain myself this time. As in last time, I wasn't able to explain myself because I didn't know what Yom Kippur was. I didn't understand it. I know Hashem was bringing me there. The Spirit at the time, Sacred Mystery, is who I was calling Hashem. Sacred mystery, you know? That's who Hashem was to me. And he brought me there, you know, that day. Like I was supposed to be standing at that street. I didn't even know there was going to be a service that day in 2008 or 2009, whatever day it was. whatever year it was. But I was supposed to just, I saw the people all going into the temples, and I longed to see it because I never was able to see or be in the temple before. And when they asked me for that ticket, my heart dropped. But I wasn't able to explain myself. I wasn't able to say, listen, just tear me out this time. I'm ready. I'm ready for my atonement. I'm ready for this. Please let me in. So I'm going to ask them. And I'm glad that it happened now the way that it all had to happen. Because it's almost like I had to prove myself. I had to prove this. I had to prove that I'm eligible. I had to prove that those temple doors will be open to me. And if I don't have a ticket, I could at least explain why I'm there, why everything is happening. I'm not going to tell them I'm Mashiach and all that stuff. I'm sure that they would, they might tell me, well, there's the door to your Mashiach, So I want them to be comfortable. I don't want them to feel like, who's this guy with the attitude or with the ego? Because there ain't no ego there. It's just I'm living the life Hashem wants me to live. I'm taking the journey Hashem wants me to take. And it's leading me back now to Yom Kippur. It's leading me back now to atone. To atone and what atonement really is. To really look at it all from every angle. From every angle. And I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be going. I'm happy to at least try again. So that's all tomorrow. That's, the Yom Kippur starts tonight. It has something to do also with the two goats. And within the last, when I traveled the Americas, the two goats are in my story. I've been thinking about that today, because there were two goats. There were two goats when I was in Missouri. And I had gone to this Amish man to go get my goat of sacrifice. And what do I do with this goat? I didn't know anything about sprinkling the blood anywhere because I'm not a big fan of bloodletting, and I still ain't. I'm not a big fan of bloodletting, killing for the gods, whatever God it is, even Hashem, and Hashem knows this. Maybe Hashem needs to show me something on all this still. I don't know. But the killing of the goat, the first goat, I went in there, and the Amish man, and I was dressed in my shamanic regalia, had everything. I smudged the goat, I thanked the goat, and then I cut the goat's throat, and I watched the goat lead out after a prayer of thanksgiving. One of the things that got me with the goat, though, that really surprised me, caught me off guard with the first goat, was the way it said, "Ma, ma," when the Amish guy grabbed it for the butchering. And I'll never forget that sound. I'll never forget that goat yelling, which sounded so much like it was calling for its mother. But I slit its throat regardless, because I was going to use it as meat, not just slit the throat, throw it on a sacrifice, but slit the throat and eat the meat. And it's what I did. At the time, too, though, during this time, there must be some, I think, could be, there's some, but it wouldn't have been it was some type of Muslim holiday going on. And after I slit the throat of that goat, the Amish guy, we brought the goat up to the barn, and there were two Muslim men there from Saudi Arabia. That's why I said it's not. It wasn't the Shiite Muslim holiday, which usually falls about now, or can fall about now. But it was some type of Muslim Islamic holiday going on, and they were there to kill a goat too. So they had their goat hanging with the sacrificial goat, like Islamic sacrifice. I had mine purely for meat, food, say my prayer, have my goat meat in my fridge. And those two men were standing there, and they saw me in my shamanic regalia, and they were like, "What are you all about?" And I told them the story. And our goats were sitting there, both goats were sitting there hanging. And they said, but then they got onto it, like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I traveled the Americas. I've been fulfilling the prophecies of the first tribes. In which, if you really think about it, the first tribes, that's what I was doing. I was fulfilling the prophecies of the first tribes, which I'm fulfilling the prophecy of a first tribe now, the Hebrew tribe. But it's the last tribe I need to fulfill. So I was sitting there and I was talking to them, and I said to them, told them all about it, what I was doing. And he said to me, well then, if you're on this and you're working with the first tribes, this cleric that was there, one of the clerics, this was in Kansas City too. I mean, what are the odds of all that happening, If Hashem doesn't want this to happen, if Hashem doesn't want me to be there, what is this happening that I just willy-nilly go to this guy at any appointed time I needed to be there, that, just showed up, and there's two Muslim men with a goat hanging while I'm killing the other goat. And they said, well, if you know all this stuff, if what you're saying is true, then give us a prophecy. Tell us a prophecy. So I said, okay. I said, first let me do a dare dance. And I did this dare dance around them, which I kind of did this dare dance. And I looked at him and I said, took me a moment to wrap my head around this, what prophecy was going to come at me. And I said to him, here's the prophecy. You're going to wake up tomorrow and the sun is going to be rising in the east. And they laughed at me. And they said, that ain't a prophecy. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that the sun is going to rise in the east. And I said, but I'll tell you now, unlike Muhammad, my prophecy is till the end of time, that sun is going to rise from east to west. And that shut him up. That shut them up. They looked at me like, all right, I get it. I get it. And I left that there. And I brought the goat home and ate that goat all summer long out of my freezer and refrigerator. The next year came. Now that ain't the 2 goats. Maybe I should have said the 3 goats because the other goat was hanging there with the Muslims. Now, with the second goat, I felt bad about that first goat. Butchering that first goat with my own hand. And the whole ma, ma incident. You know, how it sounds like it's yelling ma. So I was like, well, I'm going to get another goat. I'm going to get another goat from the Amish man this year. And now I'm wondering, and this is the strange thing, because the first year I did it, I remember it was spring, and it was around Easter. So the second time, I don't remember what really season of religious season it was in. I just remember it was hot out. It was a hot day. So I asked for a goat again with this Amish guy. And I'm wondering if it was on Yom Kippur. You know, it would be strange if it was. Because it could be, you know, because I was still hanging out, you know, during September during this time. And if Yom Kippur could fall in September, which it can, because I died on the second day of Rosh Hashanah and came back to life, and that was on September 14th, so on September 24th, it could still be summer. So it could still be around that time I'm hanging out in Missouri, because I used to go to Missouri in the summers, then back down to Tucson. Whoa! What? Dude just cut me off. Holy cow. What the heck happened? Alright, everybody. Sorry about that. You still there? Alright, we're still there. We're still live. Okay, so anyway, the second goat, right? Yeah, the freaking semi-truck just came out of nowhere and cut me off, man. So anyway, the second goat, I go to the same Amish guy. This time, I brought a stuffed skunk with me. And I put sage in the old goat's horn, the goat from the year before. I kept his horn. So I brought the sage with me, and I never would buy the goats. I would buy something else, like a rock or you know, it was a rock that I would buy with money, so I was never purchasing the goat for cash. I thought that was wrong, you know, even with the first goat, second goat, I would buy a rock, and then he would gift me the goat. So I went in and asked for the goat. The Muslim men weren't there this time, just me and him. He grabbed that goat, same call, ma, ma, ma. He brings that in. I'm dressed in my regalia, my shamanic regalia, and he comes out with this goat. And I tie it up. And then out of his pocket, he says, here, I got this for you. And it was a knife, pocket knife. So he opens it up, and I said, thank you very much, but I'm not going to need it. He said, you're not going to need it. And I said, no. I said, this one, I'm going to release. Now, I don't know about the 2 goats of Yom Kippur, But in a way, I'm playing it out. I'm playing it out by the way that Hashem was trying to talk to me and trying to have me learn. So, and it was just because I killed the goat the year before, I thought I should free one this year. That was it. Like, it was no religious thought about it or anything like that. Just free the goat. Free that goat. That's all I got to do. And there was this place I used to go to pray. And it was a place where Orioles were plentiful. So I called it the Mosque of the Orioles. So I tied up the goat, threw him in the back of my truck, and I brought him out to the woods. And I walked up to the goat, and I cut his rope, and I said, "You're free. Go ahead. You can go now." That goat just stood there looking at me like, what do I do now? I'm just like, you're free. Nobody's going to eat you, at least not here, you know. You're a free goat. You're a free meat goat. Go have fun. So anyway, I left it there and I drove away. And later that night, I told my sisters the story about the goat and how I freed the goat. And my sister said, I was driving home and there was a cop down the street from me, because the woods wasn't far from her house. And he had a leash, and on the end of the leash was a white goat. And I said, yeah, the unblemished goat, because it had to be unblemished. That's the only thing I wanted, was an unblemished goat. And she said, well, the cop was holding it. And then I found out that the cop had brought the goat to this goat farm. So I was like, well, the goat got busted. I tried my best, and the goat was captured, and he was brought back to a goat farm, and well, he's probably going to meet his fate there too. That I didn't want to happen, but it is what it is. I felt like I was totally in the clear. I felt good about what I had done by freeing this goat. Anyway, the next day, I go to the store, and I'm picking up something to eat. I forget what it was, but it's early morning and something. But I catch whiff of a conversation that's being had close by about a lady with the goat farm. That night, all the goats had broke out of the goat pen. It were on the loose all around town. There were 18 goats that they didn't know where they were. And that did it for me. That did it for me. I just kept on thinking, I freed that goat. And that goat was captured. And then they brought that goat to a goat farm. And that goat opened up that fence and let all those other goats out. Or for some reason, that fence opened. However that happened, it happened. But that's a true story. That's a Yom Kippur story. I never heard about what happened to the goat after that. But that's a true story. And it brings me to that scapegoat, Out of all the goats they butcher and kill and for the blood of it. You know, and like I said, I'm not a big fan of bloodletting or the celebration of it because you will only get more of it. I mean, look at what happens with the bloodletting of Jerusalem when they were bloodletting the animals in Jerusalem for the high priest to sprinkle blood on his high seat for the sins of Israel, I'll just stick with this for a second. What had happened is it all went to the bloodletting of one man. At least some people think that, and they celebrate it today. And I don't think any bloodletting should be celebrated. It's one of the reasons I don't think Jesus was God. Because I don't think Hashem would want bloodletting of man or beast to continue on any longer with the knowledge that we have gained in those 2,000 years. So even the celebration of the bloodletting of any man is not to be done. In ceremony or otherwise, or in reenactments, anything. Blood is holy. And what God gives us should remain. And to kill for it, to kill for blood, I think it's more the shaitan talking to us than anything else. If we're going to clear it up, I think within the next 5 years, these issues within Israel will be cleared up. So anyway, the goat that is the scapegoat, which was the second goat in a way. You know, the goat that was captured and brought back to the goat farm, or a goat farm. You know, I didn't perform any ceremony that said, all the sins of our people are upon you, all accidental sins of our people are upon you. You are free. I just said you are free. And he went and freed the others. I remember telling the story to somebody, and they said, feral goats are a terrible thing. And I thought, well, you might think so, but I think we should have feral goats. I think feral goats would be good for us. We could hunt them, use them for our meat if we need be. They could help trim forests and keep debris down in California woods and stuff like that. You know, wild goats. I think there's something to it. You know, I think it would work. I think they're needed. Feral goats. So yeah, pretty interesting story, huh? Pretty. That's what happened though. That was the story of the two goats in Yom Kippur. My two goats. Atoning for the sins tomorrow. You know. You know, we all know now, you know, that, you know, the book of life is going to be opened up, that book of life. And Hashem is going to write down in that book of life, you know, what your year is going to be like coming up. And I'm praying for a good year. Oh my gosh, I need a good year. You know, I need a year that really lifts me up, that says everything I'm doing is on the right path. Lord, take me off the path. You know, I mean, take me off this path of Pete Mashiach. Yeah, I've been called into it, yes.